Hello, my name is Cody Deegan. I am an artist, and today I'm going to be teaching you about character drawing. We're going to start by drawing the head. Now, the best shape to start drawing the head with is a circle. Now, notice when I'm drawing this, I'm sketching. And by sketching, notice how I'm using short little motions with the pencil. And I'm finding the shape. I'm looking for it. So if you struggle drawing circles, you should practice this. Practice drawing circles to where they look like circles. Now the next step is to try and transfer this into a 3D drawing, 3 dimensions. Right now it looks flat. It looks two-dimensional. When drawing characters, we want to be able to get into that 3-dimensional realm. And to do that, we have to be able to manipulate simple forms. So I want to turn this circle into a sphere. We can think of it as like a globe. It has poles or axes. So what I want to do to make this easy is I want to start by drawing an axis, a vertical axis, right down the center of this circle. So the trick is finding center. Well, if I draw it over here, that's not going to be center. If I draw it over here, it's not going to be center. What I'm doing is I'm looking for the center. And notice how I'm using a light motion because I'm not committing yet. I'm just roughing in, and then what I'm doing is I'm looking, does this distance between here and here look the same as this distance from here to here? That's what I'm looking for. And to my eye, that's pretty close. Now, if you're struggling with this, if you're struggling to tell whether they look the same, here's a trick you can do. You can measure with your pencil. Go ahead and line the tip of your pencil up with one edge of the circle, and then take your finger and hold it at the other end. So what I'm doing is I'm capturing this measurement. Now I can move the pencil and I can line it up here and I can see, does my finger line up with the other one? If it's way off, then I know I have not put my center line in correctly. I'll want to erase that and try again and remeasure. Now, the more you use this method, the more you're going to calibrate your eye and your brain to be able to recognize spatial relationships. You'll be able to recognize length better, and you'll get to the point where you don't need to measure anymore. But if you're struggling, then this is a great tool to start with. So that looks pretty good. I have a vertical axis. Now what I want to do is I want to create a horizontal axis. So I'm going to do the same thing. Now I'm going to try and draw a center line horizontally through the circle. And if I'm having trouble locating horizontal, I can use the edge of my paper. And what I can do is I can look and I can think to myself, is this line that I'm drawing look parallel to the edge of my paper? Checking if lines are parallel is a very important skill to develop as an artist. And you'll see why as we go along. So to me, this looks pretty good. Again, if you're not sure, you can check it. Take a measurement. So I've divided this circle up. I've got a vertical axis, I've got a horizontal axis. Okay, but this still looks flat. It doesn't look three-dimensional. That's okay. We're going to start by building the head from the easiest view, which is straight on, very symmetrical. And in case you're unsure, symmetrical simply means that one side is a mirror image of the other. For the human head, when you're looking directly at it, it's not a perfect circle. What we're going to do is we're going to cut the edges off. Like this. So I'm going to remove a portion of this circle simply by drawing a line like this. Now when I draw this line, to help me get this line correct, I'm going to use the center line as a point of reference. I'm going to look at that and I'm going to try and make this line parallel to this one. In reality, instead of being parallel to the center line, these edges come in a little bit, meaning they taper more to the bottom like this. But for the sake of keeping things simple and easy to understand, I am just going to try and keep this line parallel to the center line. Now I talked about being symmetrical, so we're going to do another line right over here on this side. Now I could just draw it over like this and hope for the best and hope I get it right, but one thing I can do to make this a little easier is I can use this horizontal line right here as a point of reference, and then where this line touches the circle, I'm going to come over with another construction line and I'm going to keep it parallel to this line. I'm just going to come over and take it to this edge. Do the same down here. Try and keep it parallel. Where these end at the circle, I can then connect them with a vertical line that is parallel to this line. So basically I've drawn a box inside a circle. And if my center lines are in the right spot, all these squares should look pretty similar in size. Now I'm not going for perfection. I just want things to look rather close. These are all construction lines, so these are just to help me with my final drawing. So why did I do this? Okay, we removed this section here and we removed this section here. We're getting rid of those. But the reason we create the box is now we've got these construction lines that are very helpful in the head, because this distance from here to here is the same as this distance from here to here. We can bring this distance down here to get the chin line. So basically, we've got a brow line right here. This line right up here is going to represent the hairline. And this line, this construction line right here, represents the nose. That's where we're going to place the nose. All these lines are construction lines to help us place features of the face. So now I want to get the chin line. And I want an equal distance. I'm going to use this distance from brow to nose. I'm going to come down here and I'm just going to make a little construction line where I think it is. And again, if I'm not sure, I can take a measurement and then come down and see that, oh, I came down a little far. I really should be more like this. As you get better at doing this process, you might change some of these proportions. For example, you might make the chin line lower if you want a more masculine character and you want the chin bigger. You might bring the chin down further. But for now, I'm just going to teach you the basics. These are the standard measurements that you can start with. So because I moved this, I'm going to check it again just to make sure that it's pretty close. So this is where I'm going to put the chin. So now that I have all these placements, the next thing I need to put in is the jawline. Now, if you don't know, the top of the ears line up with the eyebrows, and the bottom of the ears line up with the nose. So when we're looking directly straight ahead at the face, this is where the ears are going to sit. Now, the jaw is going to come from this brow line right here. We're going to start right at the center, and we're going to come down like this, at kind of an angle, just a slight angle. We're not going to come straight down this line. We're going to come at an angle. And then we're going to come down a little bit. How far down? Well, you have to decide. I'd say it's probably about a quarter of this distance, maybe a third, roughly in that area. That's usually where I go. I'm going to come down about right there, and that's where I'm going to end it. That's where I'm going to end the jawline. Now, I want to do the same on the other side, because remember, we're keeping this symmetrical. So one thing that helps to get the other side coming down to the same position is to do another construction line and just draw it all the way over and keep it parallel with all these other lines. This is why I said earlier that the term parallel comes in very handy with drawing, because these construction lines help me keep things where they need to be. So now I can start here right at the center of this brow line. And I'm going to, again, come at a slight angle, try and keep it to the same angle as this one, just in the opposite direction, and come down to that line. And then with the chin, you have to decide how wide you want the chin. Chins come in all shapes and sizes, so depending on what kind of character you want to draw, you decide how wide you want this to be. And then make sure that the distance from the center to the end is the same on both sides. So sometimes it helps to make little construction marks like this so that you can gauge it better with your eyes. And then you can just connect these up. Go ahead and connect one end of the chin to the jawline, and same with the other side. And then the head's just going to come up along this line, and then it's just going to flow into that circle. Now we've got a basic head shape. Now from here, I can put in the ears because I have construction lines to help me know where to put those. The eye line is going to come down from the brow roughly about a quarter, a third. You can decide what looks good for your character. I'm going to rough in a construction line, and again, keep this parallel to the other lines of where I want my eyes to sit. So my nose is going to be here, eyes, brow. This is my hairline, and then we still need to figure out the mouth. I'm going to erase these construction lines in here. I don't want things to start getting distracting for me. I'm going to erase those edges. Now, if you were drawing manga characters, anime characters, normally they use the whole circle. They don't cut off the edges. So just know that. And another thing with manga anime characters is your eyes would not sit on a line like this, because the current style with anime and manga characters is to have really large eyes. So this would be more like a comic book style character. Whereas with an anime character, you'd probably bring this line up from the bottom here, maybe. Bring that up from the nose and use that as a guide, and then fill this whole area with your eye. But I'm going to put my eye line right about there. There's my brow line. Going to keep my center line visible because that's still going to be useful. So now to figure out where the mouth is, I'm going to go halfway between the nose and the chin, which I'd say is going to be roughly right in here. I'd say that's about halfway. Now, this is not the mouth, this is the lower lip. Halfway between the nose and the chin is where I put the lower lip. Once I have the lower lip in, then it makes it easier for me to decide where I'm going to put the mouth. So I'm just going to do a little construction line right here, bring it out a little further. Now I've got my placement for the mouth. I need the placement for the eyes. Now sometimes it helps to start in the center, the space between the eyes. The distance between the eyes is roughly the same distance as an actual eye. So that's going to help me out. I'm going to make a little mark on one side of the center line, and then I'm going to come over and try and make a mark in the same place on the other side. And then I'm going to look at that. I'm going to say, okay, is that about how wide I want my eye? And to me, this looks a little small. I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger. Maybe there and there. And then once I have that and that looks good to me, then I'll come over and try and do the same distance here and then the same distance over here. So that's my eye placement. Now what's nice about having the eyes in place is if you have a neutral expression on your character, meaning my character's not smiling, not doing anything weird, just a nice relaxed look, what I can then do is come down, go over from the inside of the eye about a quarter or a third and bring a construction line down parallel with the vertical center line. Bring that down, and that's going to help tell you where the ends of the mouth are. Do the same on the other side. And then I'm just going to make a dot there and a dot there. I'm just going to draw simple eyes here. One line going up at an angle, then coming across parallel with the brow line, and then I'll drop it at the end, and I'll try and do the same with the other side. Basically doing squares for the eyes for now. Again, I'm just keeping things simple. I'll do a little half curve shape on the nose. Now, as far as the width of the nose, usually the width of the nose is pretty close. You can use the corners of the eye, bring a construction line down parallel with the center line, and you can use those to help you gauge the width of the nose. And again, I have to repeat this. These are just basic measurements. These are starting point measurements. Now for the eyebrows, we're going to use this brow line. I usually do the starting point just a little bit in front of the eye. So if the eye starts here, I'm going to come just a little forward of the eye, and that's where I'm going to start my eyebrow. And where I'm going to end it is a little bit behind. Same over here. And then I'm going to arch it a little. And so all I'm going to do is I'm going to do one shorter line and then one longer line. It's actually the opposite. It's a long stroke and then a short stroke at the end. Maybe your character has thick eyebrows, maybe thin. But as long as you have these placeholders, you can build upon this. So there's the basic face. We got the hairline. Now, if I want to put in a neck, I have to decide, okay, where does the neck come? Well, necks also come in all shapes and sizes. If you have a big, tough, burly character, you might even start the neck over here behind the ear. Bring it out like this. Now, all of a sudden, this character looks pretty strong, pretty big, pretty stout. But if that's not what you're going for and you just want something a little more average, come in from the ear a little bit. So start here where the ear meets the face. Come in just a little bit, and then you can come down from there. Same on the other side. Come in just a little bit and bring it down like this. So that's kind of your basic neck right there. And then you can vary that as you want. You can make it thinner, you can make it thicker. But it's good to know these basic starting points, these generic measurements. That'll get you started, and then once you have those, you can build on these. You can tweak your character however you want. Make the chin bigger, smaller, make the jaw wider, rounder, smoother, more angular. I'm going to shape this mouth a little bit. Little V right in the center. It almost looks like a volcano, a very shallow volcano. Just like that. Okay, so once you know all this, now how do you manipulate this to where you can now draw this face in any position? Let's say I want him looking over this way, or I want him looking up or looking down, or me as the viewer, am I above him? Am I below him? These are all things that can be seriously challenging to draw until you start getting a firm grasp on drawing things in 3 dimensions. So I'm going to draw another circle over here, just like I did before. The process starts the same, whether you're drawing flat, straight on, or you have the head turned, positioned in a different, more 3-dimensional pose. The process is the same. Start with that circle. And then let's get an axis. Let's get a vertical axis. And then let's get a horizontal axis. Now let's say we want the head facing almost 3/4. How about 3/4 towards us? So what you do is, starting at the center line, which was the center of his nose, now it's going to be coming over this way about 3/4. So come off this center line, make a little mark. I'm going to make the mark right here. This is where I'm going to have the new center line of his face. Now what I need to do is I need to draw a curve that comes back and around so that this starts to look like a globe. Now to draw these curves correctly, you got to know a little trick. I already showed you the first part of the trick. I marked the apex of the curve. Now if you don't know what an apex is, when you have a curve, at some point it comes out the furthest, changes direction, and then starts to go back the other way. That point where it's the furthest out before it changes direction, that is called the apex. So that's all we're doing right here. We're establishing the apex of the curve. The next thing you need to establish is the start point, and you need to know the end point. Those are the 3 main ingredients you need for drawing a curve. Now, when drawing a curve on a circle to create a sphere, So we already know the first thing you have to do. You have to decide where is that apex. Decide where it's going to cross this horizontal center line. Okay, once you have that, you have to know where is the start point, where's the end point. Now, a lot of people want to put them right on the pole, but the only time the start point and the end point is right on that vertical axis is when we're looking straight on at the character. When we're looking directly at this circle, that's the only time these points are going to be right on that axis. When we start pushing away from the axis with our center line, then these are going to move. All right, these points are going to go this way when we start drawing the curve over on this side. And it'll be the opposite. You know, if we're going to draw the curve over here, these start and end points are going to move this way. How much do they move? Well, that depends on how far the apex is. If the apex is right here, these are not going to move very much at all. You know, we might put the, let me make this more clear. Let's make this nice and clear, this vertical axis. That's the center pole. If we put our apex right there, this might be our start point and our end point right here. They're just barely away from the center line. And then up here, maybe it's going to be like here. And then, you know, way up here, if it's coming way out closer to the edge, maybe our start and end point are going to be right here. So that's something you need to know. The other thing you need to know before you draw this curve, because it's not just a matter of drawing one smooth gradual curve from start to end. That's not how curves work on a sphere. You want to break the curve up into two sections. The beginning section will be short like this, and then the rest of the section will be long like this. So this section here of the curve, that's going to be nice and smooth. It'll be gradual. This part right here where we start, this is the start. This is going to be more steep and abrupt. So what I mean by that is when you draw this curve, that beginning section is going to be a little different than this section. This will be nice and smooth, but that first section is going to be more like this. Now, the further the apex of the curve gets away from the center, the more this is going to smooth out. So by the time you get out to here, your curve is going to look more like this. It's going to be more smooth. But if you're doing curves that are closer to the center line, you're going to get more of this effect. So short little section that's real steep, and then it's going to go gradual, cross that apex line, gradual, and then get steep right at the end. We'll go up a little bit. We'll go to this next one. Same thing. Steep. Not as steep as the first one, but a little steep, then gradual. Come around and drop in. I'm going to bring this up just a little bit more. So you're given the sense of that roundness. Now this last one is going to start up here, and this one not going to be very steep or abrupt at all. Going to be more smooth. Go through that point, and then continue around to the other side. So those are all the things you need to know for drawing curves on a circle to make it look like a sphere. So now that we know that, we're going to draw this curve here. We've already got the apex. It's coming about halfway from the center line and the outer edge. So here's the center line here. We're going to come away from this edge a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and put my start point, my end points about right there. And then I'm going to be a little abrupt coming from this point. and then start to smooth out and come up to my apex line. And then let's go to the other side and drop it in abruptly right at the end, just like that. So there's my new center line. I'll go ahead and knock this one down a bit. I don't want to erase it completely because I'm going to still need that to help me draw parallel lines. So now I've got a circle and I've got my axes in. I've got my vertical and my horizontal. My vertical is now a curve because I'm rotating in space. The next step was to remove a section of that circle. We cut off the sides of the face. How do you do this when we're not looking directly at it? Well, now we need to create an ellipse. And I just taught you how to create an ellipse, because an ellipse is nothing more than this curve times 2, meaning this is half an ellipse right here, this curve we just drew. If you make it symmetrical and flip it to the other side, you have an ellipse. So here's an ellipse. There's an ellipse right there. An ellipse is nothing more than a circle that's been rotated, at least for the purposes that we're using ellipses for. So when we have a circle, a flat circle looking directly at us, to turn it in space, we have to draw it as an ellipse. Now this brings up another point dealing with perspective and foreshortening. We're looking directly at a circle, then the center and the edges, these are all the same distance. These are equal distances. Now, because we're turning the circle away from us, now we've got an ellipse, these distances are going to change. When we have something, I'm trying to make each side equal to the other. Here's the center point right here. When we have something like this and we want to turn it in space, distance from here to here is the same as from here to here. When we want to turn that in space, a couple things we can do. We can, let's say I want to make this come towards me, and I want to make this go away from me. Then what I can do is I can make this object right here larger than this one. Right now they're the same size, but I can make this one larger, and I can make this one smaller. The other thing I can do is I can move this center point. I'm going to move it back like this so that now the distances are not equal. Now this distance is longer than this distance. And that gives the impression that this has rotated. So the same thing here. Even though we may have a center line going through this ellipse right here, the horizontal one is fine. But the center one, we don't want it dead center because now that's not giving the sense that this is turned away from us. We want to bring it back a little bit like this. So move your center line like this. Now this distance is longer than this distance. And that's how you create an ellipse. Going back to constructing our face, we want to draw an ellipse to represent that side of the head that is removed. Now you'll have to draw a few of these before you get a sense of what you like and how to do this properly. I generally try and find one edge, like the top apex. I try and find that top apex by generalizing where I think the hairline's going to be. So I think the hairline will roughly be about here. This is why the term parallel is so important. I want to use these other lines to help me draw other lines that are parallel. So I noticed it was a little off. Check it. Okay. So this is what I'm doing. I'm saying my hairline's right here. That's where I'm going to start my ellipse. That's going to be the top apex of my ellipse. Because here's the thing. If you draw this ellipse too small, you've got the hairline here now. This is going to be where your nose is. This is your brow. That's just too small. This ellipse is important for determining the features of your face. Now, unless the character is completely stylized and you're doing this on purpose, You want to get the general sense first. You want to get all the general standard, basic, average measurements so that you have a starting point to where you can then exaggerate and change as you see fit. But to start with, we don't want to go too small and you don't want to go too large, because if you have an ellipse here that is too large, hairline's up here, nose is way down here, you're going to have a really long face. So that's why I say you got to draw a few of these before you kind of get it to where you feel comfortable of where to put this ellipse. So I've determined my hairline. I'm going to run it right through there. So this is where I'm going to start my ellipse. Now, I want to get a center line. I'm going to kind of guess on this. This will probably change, but this is going to help me to draw this ellipse. So I'm going to draw a construction line that is parallel with the vertical axis. Just come down like that. So now I've got an apex here. Where do I draw my apex on the horizontal axis? Well, now I want to introduce you to the term offset curve. An offset curve is basically a curve that is parallel to another curve. Remember how we have parallel lines? This is parallel. These two lines are parallel. When we have curves, you can draw curves parallel as well. So these are parallel curves. This is an offset curve. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to draw an offset curve. Why do we need to know this? Because it makes it easier. If you just try and draw an ellipse, you might not do it right. But if you have a reference, look at this center line. That's going to be our reference. We're going to draw an offset curve to this, and that's going to help us draw this. So I've got a start point. I can come up a little abruptly and then start to smooth it out. Nice smooth curve, and try and follow the path of this curve. Okay? And then repeat on the other side. Now you've got 2 points of reference. You can try and mirror this one and try and follow this one. Smooth. And then drop it abruptly as it comes down to the end. Now you'll want to mirror on the other side. Abrupt, smooth, abrupt, smooth. So there I've drawn an ellipse. That's going to help represent the section of the head that we are removing. We're cutting this portion of the head off. I've already got a horizontal axis. And then this center line, I'm going to move it back just a bit. Move it back just a bit. Why does this matter? Well, because this line right here is where we're going to put the ear. And it's also where we're going to start the jaw. So we want to make sure we have it in the right spot. So now that we have this, I've got a hairline. And then I can do another line, draw it parallel with these two, draw it across. And then that's going to give me the nose line. And so now we need to find the chin line. Now, one thing I'm noticing already is it looks like my distance between here and here is smaller than from here to here. And I don't have to measure it. I can already tell it's wrong. But I will measure it just to double check, and it is wrong. So I can look around and I can see that the distance from the top of the circle to the hairline is way larger than the distance from the bottom of the circle to the nose line. So I've got this in the wrong spot. It's just a simple error, but it is going to affect the final outcome because that would cause me to put the nose in the wrong spot. And in turn, it would make me put the chin in the wrong spot because I'm using this distance from there to there to help me figure out where the chin goes. So this still looks a little large. It's possible that my center line for the circle is wrong. Although it seems pretty good. So what I think has happened is I've drawn this ellipse a little long this way. I basically came down to the circle and I realized that I wasn't on the circle. So this ellipse needs to come more like this. And then I think that will solve the problem of this distance being wrong. All right, so this is looking a little better. So now I can feel a little more confident in plotting in my chin line, which is going to be the same distance from the nose down as it is from the brow line to the nose line. So I'm going to come straight down from this point here. Right where this center line crosses the brow, I'm just going to draw a construction line straight down. I'm using the center vertical axis as a guide to help me keep it parallel. And then I'm going to come down this line about this same distance, and that's going to be my chin line. Say right about there. Now before we drew the chin line, we had a center line and then we came over equally on both sides of the center line. That's when we were looking directly at it. But now the head is turned away from us. So now this distance between here and here needs to be longer than this distance from here to here. So now I want to draw it like this. Little longer here, little shorter here. Same concept as this. All right, this is how we need to start thinking when we turn things in 3D space. So I'll make a mark here for the end of my chin, and then over here I'll make it there. And I'm just eyeballing this. I'm making sure that this side looks a little longer than this side. So now we'll draw the jawline. Again, starting right here at the center of the brow and the side of the head. I'm not going to come straight down, but I'm going to use this as my starting point, and I'm going to draw an angled line down like this, and I'm going to come down below this nose line just a little bit, maybe right about there. I don't need to draw a construction line this time all the way over to get the other side, because the other side is going to be obscured. We're not going to see it, because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the chin to the jawline just like we did before, like this. However, I should point out before I connect this side why I don't need this. We've got another ellipse on the other side of the head that we can't see, right? Well, it's actually a good idea to know where it is, because that can help us place the other ear. If we know where the other ear is, that's going to help us place the neck later on. So how do we do that? Well, you can actually look at the edge of this circle right here and look at the distance between here and here, the center line of this ellipse. Look at that distance there, and then do the same thing. Use this edge over here of the circle and bring it in about that same distance. And that can give you an idea of where that other ear is going to sit. This also will give you an idea of where this jaw sits. So if we came down from there and we came across like this, we could see that the other jaw point is going to sit right there like that. So we could connect this up. But here's the thing. We're not going to see that point because we're going to connect this up to the rest of the face like this. So now that's obscuring the other jaw mark. We're not going to see the other jaw point. All right, let me clean this up a little bit. This is starting to get a little messy looking. So now we have a new center line. We got the side of the face in. We got the jaw coming up like this. Got a brow line. Our nose is going to sit right there. So let's figure out where the mouth goes. Remember, halfway between the nose and the chin. I'm going to say roughly right there. That's the lower lip. Come up a little bit. That's where the mouth is going to be. Try and keep it parallel to these other guidelines. I'm not going to do the ends of the mouth yet. Let me get the eyes in. So the eye line, let's come down from the brow a little bit. Maybe about a quarter, in between a quarter and a third roughly, I'm coming down from the brow line. Parallel, construction line. Okay, remember the thirds? breaking this up into thirds. How do we do this? How do we break it up into thirds if we're now looking the other way? If we're now looking at a 3/4 view. So if we're looking directly at it, it wasn't that hard, right? We break this up into thirds. We can kind of make a couple construction lines until they all look roughly even. And then there's thirds. How do you do that when it's turned? Well, again, we're using this concept right here. We've got a start point and we've got an end point, but now instead of these all being equal, we need one that is a little shorter than the next one, which is a little shorter than the next one. Does that make sense? They're gradually getting bigger. This one looks a little too big now, so I'm going to adjust that. I'm going to bring that here, maybe bring that here. You kind of play with it until you find it. So this is what I'm going to do with the eyes. And remember, these cross a center line. So the center line needs to fall on this line in such a way so that the distance between the center line and this first point is longer than the distance between the center line and this point here. So this is my game plan. This is how I'm going to lay out the eyes. So again, it usually helps to lay out the space between the eyes first. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to rough in a line right there, and then this one here, bring this out a little bit, and I'm going to look at it, say, that might be okay. Then let's make a little bit longer distance and come out here like maybe right there. That makes me want to bring this one out a bit. So I just kind of fine tune it until I get it to where I like it. So I'm drawing kind of lightly, although I'm using a dark pencil so it's easy to see on camera. Normally I'd be using a much lighter pencil. And then now let's make the other eye, the distance, the length of that eye, less than this distance here. So maybe something like that. And then just look at it. Does that look pretty good? Small, medium, large. All right, so once I have those in, then it makes it easy to find the location of the ends of the mouth. Remember that first quarter of the eye just comes straight down using this as a guide to create a parallel construction line. That puts the point right there. And then same on the other side. Use that first quarter of the eye. Come down, straight down. And then where it crosses that mouth line, there's your other point. And look, automatically you can see that the distance between the center line and this one is longer than this one to this one. So we've successfully created our perspective. How about the nose? So before, straight on, I kind of drew the nose as kind of a trapezoid shape. A little bit of a curve for the tip, and then I just came over at equal angles on the edges, and then kind of came in like this. So very simplified shape. Doesn't really look like a nose at all. That's what I'm using as my placeholder for my mannequin. So when we want to turn this, we need to look at these angles here on the edges. Let me draw another set of axis lines. Let me go over that again real quick. The camera shut off. I don't know how much it missed, but this was the head-on shape. If I duplicate this angle here and then this angle here, that's kind of the angle that they're at, right? Well, when we push this way, the angle on this side, these are going to also push this way. So now this angle is going to get a little more gradual. It's not going to be as steep, whereas this one over here is going to get steeper. And then we keep that little curve between them, like this. and then bring the ends to the center just like we did there. And so this is a simplified shape, but this is a good placeholder for the nose that I like to use. So that's how I'm going to draw the nose here. I'm just going to draw it the exact same way I did, but I'm going to make this angle a little more gradual this way, and then I'm going to make this angle steeper this way. And where do I start it? Well, I already have the marks for the eyes. We already talked about in the first face that we can line up the nose. We can line up the nose with the start points of the eyes. So I'm going to bring a construction line straight down here and here. And now that gives me the start points for my nose. I'm just going to connect them to the center line here and here. I'm going to make my more gradual angle and then my more steep angle, and then connect them with a curve. Then I can get my eyes in. Use those starting points, drawing them the same way. Eyebrows. Again, starting a little bit in front of the eye, I'm going to make a couple start point construction lines, little marks. Make sure the distance between this one here is larger than the distance there. End marks. This one will end at the edge of the circle. And then I'm just going to use a slight arch. So basically I'm starting a little bit below the brow line, coming up, and then bringing it back down. Do a long stroke on the first part of the eyebrow, and then a shorter stroke on the back. I can bring my ear off here and fit it right there. And now I've drawn a face in a 3/4 view without much struggle, and everything is in the right spot. Now I can go in and start stylizing it, adding contour lines. And then the neck. Again, I'm going to start it just behind the ear here. Actually, because of this angle, we might see more of the neck back like this. So I'll probably bring this out a little more like this. But now because I know where that other ear is, I can start the neckline right there and bring it down like this and feel a little better about my placement of it. And I might have to move things a bit. I feel like this nose could come over a little bit. So a little steeper on that one edge. Right through there. Okay, let's do one more. So we've got straight on, we can do 3/4. Let's do one where we're rotating in the other direction. Let's draw a head that's looking up. Do the same thing, start with a circle. Give myself a vertical axis and a horizontal axis. Now this time, let's have it looking up. So let's take this horizontal axis and let's bring it up like this. So I'm going to get my apex, bring my start point up a little bit, my end point up a little bit. And let's start that curve, abrupt, and then gradual, smooth it out. Same on the other side. Abrupt, steep, and then smooth it out, gradual. Now this is a little trickier with the shaving off the sides and figuring out the hairline, because the hairline's actually right up top now, probably. I'm going to go ahead and cut the sides the same way I did from the head-on figure. I just can't really use a hairline to help me. but I'm just going to take a guess here and pick a point. Let's go ahead and do those parallel lines to help me get the other side in the right spot. Make this line parallel to this one. So we'll cut off the edges there. So now we got to determine the nose line. Now normally it sits right here, right? But now we've got to do an offset curve. Following this one here, it's going to cross about right there. And then let's bring it back to the other side. So that's how you find the nose line. I can't really do the hairline because it disappears around the top of the head as it goes away from us. Not a big deal. We can still find the chin line. We've got a distance here we can use. Let's come down about that far. And because the chin's coming towards us, we could, if we wanted to, you don't have to, but you could, to really show the sense of perspective and foreshortening, is you could make the distance from the nose to the chin a little bit longer than here. Kind of like what we did with the eyes in a 3/4. This is kind of a 3/4 in the other direction. So I'm just going to bring the chin just a little bit further. Let's use a parallel line, just like from the head on, and make it equal on both sides. I'm going to make it a little longer than I did when I was doing the face on, because again, the chin's coming towards us, so as it comes towards us, it's going to get a little bigger. So let me make the chin just a little wider. Like that. Remember with the head-on view, we drew a jawline that came from the brow, right? Came from there, and it came in at an angle like this, a very slight angle. So if I drew this bigger, it was a slight angle like this, right? Well, because the chin is now coming towards us, this angle is coming up and out like this. So now this is going to change. This is no longer going to be angled like this. So now I'm going to draw it just straight down. Just going to draw it straight down, coming below this point here, the nose line, remember? That's the point. We're going to come down just a little bit, and then now that'll be the point. Let's bring it up just a bit. We're not going to have the same length, the same height that we did when we're looking at it straight on, because now it's tilting towards us. So I'm going to make this just a little smaller than I think it should be from straight on. Give myself another point over here, and now let's connect those like this. Hairline's up there. Let's go ahead and plot the eye line. Now the eye line normally comes down, like I said, about between 1/4 and 1/3 is how I was doing it. I'm going to bring it down a little further this time. The reason I'm bringing it down further is because the eyes are not on the same plane as the brow. So we have the brow, and then it comes in like this. And the eyes are set back. All right, they're pushed back this way, and the brow is pushed out this way. So as the head tilts up, we're going to see a little bit more space in between these two. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and make this distance just a little bit taller than what I normally would have in a straight-on view. So I'm going to put that there for the eyes. Let's divvy it up into thirds again, just like we did in the first head. Roughly about like that. From there, I can determine the nose width. And then let's do the mouth. Now notice what I'm doing here with the mouth is normally I come straight down and use this as a parallel line reference. But notice now I'm tapering a bit. I'm bringing the ends out. And that's just basic perspective. You know, when you look at a road, it gets smaller as it goes further away from us. So because this is all tilting towards us, I'm going to give just a little bit of an angle here for the mouth. Now, halfway between here and here is roughly about there, right? But because it's tilting towards us, we want this distance from the chin to the lower lip to be a little longer. So I'm going to come up just a bit. And there I'm going to put the lower lip. And that's going to help me place the mouth. Now, because we're looking up, normally a mouth you can draw a straight line across, right? And there's a mouth. But when it starts coming up, you need to realize that the mouth kind of sits on a sphere. It's a little more rounded. So when you're looking up at the mouth, you're going to have more of this shape here. So I have my placement line, but let me come kind of down a little bit. There we go. Bring it down like this and over, and there's the end. Good. And then the eyes are going to be a little bit more, you know, before I was kind of drawing the eyes like this. Real straight across at the top, but we're looking at it from a different angle now. So now I'm kind of coming more like this. Notice even the pupils. You know, here I've got kind of a box shape, but now that we're looking up at it, you know, now I'm going more of a shape like that. And this is all just selling the idea that this person is looking up and their head is tilted up. Let me give a construction line for the eyebrows. I'm going to start them there, and then let me end them there and there. Might see a little bit more. Actually, because the brow line is already curved this way, that's automatically going to shape these eyebrows correctly to where they kind of curve a bit. The nose, I'm going to just kind of do a taller trapezoid, just like this, because we're seeing more of the underside of the nose now. So the height is going to get taller compared to what we've been doing. Okay, now the ears. Again, using these original reference lines. Now, as an artist, I can decide to throw in a bit of hair, even though we might not see it. I'm going to, you know, if I'm putting hair on the character, he might look bald from this angle because he's looking up. So I can decide if I want to put a little hair on the top like this poking out. And then, of course, the neck. Coming from behind the ears, and I'm going to bring those lines out a bit like that. No. I just bring them straight down like I did before. So these are the fundamentals you need to know for character design to make your life a lot easier. And then to expand on this, you know, once you get these down, to expand on this, then you could start doing some anatomy studies if you want to get a little more detailed with your characters. So like understanding like these neck muscles that come up from the chest, they come up from the clavicle and go up behind the ears, knowing where those are. If you are interested in that kind of thing, that adds a whole new dimension to your drawing. But for now, this is what you really got to know. All these concepts here are going to make your life so much easier. All right, thanks for tuning in. I hope you learned something.